Welcome to the Everton Byline. This is episode number 54. I am Matt Jones. Joining me, as ever, is Paddy Boyland. Paddy, I feel like given who Everton are about to sign, we should have the ale out for this show. Maybe cans, bottles of champagne. We should be clinking off our laptops. It's been an eventful day, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not going to make any comment on any of that you've just said there. I don't think it's right to do so professionally. But I did say a few weeks ago that if Everton did sign Jack Grealish, that I expected you to go full Grealish with the headband and roll down socks and calves out. So maybe that's something for everyone to look forward to.
Well, it's not done yet at the time of recording. So, although I've seen he has been posting with Everton fans outside Finch Farm on social media. So maybe next week. Anyone who followed my London Marathon stuff, will know that I run with a headband on. So, nothing new for me in that point, Paddy. And listen, if it means that the people are happy, then that's fine. But yeah, we will, of course, be talking about Jack Grealish. We'll, of course, be talking about Everton's other transfer business as well, and the final pre-season friendly and fair test event against Roma at Hill Dickinson Stadium. And before we do get into that, just a reminder as ever, we are sponsored by the Bridewell. Put a great event on Friday with Barry Horn. By all accounts, a lot of people really said to me in the Denby on Saturday night how much they enjoyed that. So plenty more to come. Do keep an eye out on their feed. But yeah, certainly during these summer games, when the weather's nice, and the weather's going to be nice this week, great place to go outside and have a drink. So do check it out before the season starts if you get a chance. You watch us on YouTube. We are close, Les has informed me, to 5,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed and you watch us every week, it takes a second. I just stop the video for 2 seconds. You can click the little bell button underneath the video and you'll be subscribed. You get notified whenever our content goes up. You can leave us a comment and hit like as well. It'd be really appreciated. And the same goes if you are listening on Spotify or on iTunes. You can leave us a rating and leave us a review on there, especially on Spotify, where a lot more people are getting involved in the comments on there as well. So yeah, do get involved in the show in any way you can. Do subscribe any way you can. It all helps. And Paddy, you were there on Saturday, Hill Dickinson Stadium, and a lot of people, you said, were kind enough to come up to you and speak about the podcast at the ground, and a few people come up to me in the Denby after I signed off work on Saturday night as well. So it's great to keep getting such nice feedback, isn't it?
Yeah, really appreciative and nice to speak to people about the pod, hear their thoughts on it. And I guess just Saturday felt like a real occasion anyway, didn't it? In the sense that it was the first game in front of a capacity crowd, just over 50,000 in the end, given that Roma didn't sell their full allocation. Real sense of occasion. Enjoyed it up to the football bit, which is, as we know, typical for Everton. We're obviously hoping that improves. And of course, as well, the first opportunity for me as a member of the press to be in the new media facilities as well and make that quite steep walk up to the top right to the top in the back row of the West Stand. So maybe by the end of it, I'll end up with calves like Jack Grealish. I mean, here's hoping on that one.
Yeah, you can have the calves like him. I can drink like him. I'm sure across the course of the podcast, we can get all Grealish bases covered. But no, I did see you. You're on stage with Julia, in the fan plaza beforehand, and I just thought, I'd ask you now. Like after our outing in Chicago, does that mean you've done as a live partnership now? Is it one and done? That's it.
No, I can do this show, and then I can go on the fan zone on a Saturday. I mean, that was great to do as well. I mean, slightly daunting when you know that the plaza itself holds up to 17,000. I mean, I don't think 17,000 were there watching me by any stretch of the imagination, but some great guests apart from me in Dan Meese, the stadium architect, and various others. But one of the things I did pick up on was that, I mean, I got there around 12-ish. I'd walked from Moorfields with family members who were attending the game. Even there's that kind of expectation that comes with everyone walking, kind of trundling to the match. So that was nice. And then everybody was inside the stadium bowl and the stadium site from probably 12 o'clock, more or less. I'd say most people were. So lots going on. Lots of teething problems, of course, because it was a test event. I tried to go one way to get into the media room via the south stand. But the players were coming in at a similar time, so that was all cordoned off. the media entrance is right next to the player entrance, or certainly was on Saturday. So then went all the way around the other side to get in, and I suppose you're likely to. I mean, certainly I'm likely to get lost for the foreseeable because it's a new stadium with new facilities. But it was, like I say, it felt like a real occasion. Felt very special for everyone to be there, and to be there early as well, kind of ramping up that sense of expectation. I mean, I don't know how you felt about it all, but for me, it felt like the start of a new chapter, and one where we start to make Hill Dickinson our own.
Well, yeah, I didn't go on Saturday twofold, really, because one, my dad couldn't go, and I sort of wanted to go properly for the first time with him at the Brighton game in a couple of weeks, and I was working as well. So I was in the office kind of covering it and watching it on the stream. And I think the thing that the kind of, there's probably two things I noticed as a television viewer. Like the one, which is like the negative thing, is that it's going to take a lot of getting used to seeing the away fans on the telly, which is like, when a team scores a late goal like that, one of the things I always loved about Goodison was as much as it was horrible seeing it in the ground, that you ever have to watch the highlights back and go through the pain of seeing us concede goals, you wouldn't see the away fans' reaction at least. But we're going to see that in full view now, which is a bit unfortunate. But I mean, the positive thing was that I've always been really intrigued to see what it was going to look like when it was properly full. And going to that test event in February when there was only 10,000 people there and it was freezing cold, and it did still feel like a bit of a shell then, didn't it? Like, I know there's a lot of work to be done in regards to branding and making it feel like an Everton Stadium in that regard fully. So a lot of people talking about that, but it looked a lot more like that on Saturday. And I think seeing the stadium full and hearing Z cars come through, and not necessarily that raw, because I think that's one of the things that's going to take time to kind of settle in. But the kind of noise that came about at that point, like, that was all really cool, I thought, and I think it made it look even better than I kind of thought it would. And, like you said there, obviously there's some teething problems. I saw some people complaining about the red Budweiser advert that went around the advertising boards. I don't know if Everton can convince one of the most historic, biggest worldwide brands to change the colour necessarily, but maybe there's some compromise that can be reached on that. But I think just seeing it full, like, I think one of the things that people have pointed out with the architectural side of it is, like, this thing looks a bit weird, or that thing looks a bit weird. And I think those people who have kind of been a bit calmer about it all have said, just wait till people are in it and you will be able to see this, or this will look a lot different. And I think that all kind of came together from a visual point of view on Saturday, certainly.
I mean, it's natural, given this is a new facility, to be a little bit nervous about that first experience with a full capacity crowd. I mean, I attended the test events. I'd obviously been as well and shown around. Just about everything was kind of wholeheartedly positive on those trips. But until you're in there on a match day, you don't really know how it's going to go. Well, what I would say is that certainly the way the stadium is configured with the roof and everything, the noise is kept in. I mean, you really, really heard the PA system, and you really heard the Everton fans right at the start with Z cars and that roar. What you didn't get, of course, because it was a pre-season friendly that Everton lost, and I think both of those things are important, by the way, pre-season and the defeat. You didn't get the kind of the full atmosphere throughout the game. So again, we'll need to wait and see what it's like for the Brighton game. But I'm confident, like, when it's a Premier League game and when Everton are really on it and they need the fans to respond, then it'll be quite impressive and quite spectacular in that regard. So yeah, I've got no real concerns right now. And I also think stuff will get ironed out. I mean, one of the other things that was flagged to me by people on Blue Sky was that donuts cost £6.50. So people will be taking out second mortgages to afford blue donuts if they want them. I would hope that a lot of this is still subject to consultation and that things will morph over the time. It's the same with everything. It's just like, how this now compared to 10 years' time in the transport front, I imagine it will be markedly different. The offering to fans outside the stadium, again, markedly different. Inside, probably true. And then also you would expect the area itself, with some of the other developments going on in the central docks, to start to spring to life with the stadium as a catalyst. So the one thing Everton need to do now is to give fans a team befitting the sparkling new stadium to get fans excited about going to watch some of these Everton players again. And I guess somebody like Jack Grealish is designed to do just that.
Like so much of this isn't going to come out of Regan Stadium, is it? Until it's stress tested properly, and we're only going to get that really at Brighton. Like obviously, even Sunday it was a test event still, which I think has maybe been forgotten a little bit. Obviously the Legends game was at the end as well, and meant that the transport, post-match infrastructure wasn't really tested fully like it would be on a match day. So a lot of this stuff is going to be sort of come out as we go, which is to be expected. To be fair, it was never going to be everyone walks in there, it feels like Goodison Park straight away, and everything just lines up perfectly. Like I think even like stuff like singing and like where I think it's going to be really hard for people to get chance going in there, just because like having sat in the Gladys Street for so long, and people who maybe sat similar as well, like in that part of the ground, like which person starts the chant by you and where it comes from, and where like just that kind of wave of noise comes from, like, and that's all been broken up, hasn't it, to the point where now like there's going to be people who have come together from different parts of the ground, who are sat in different parts of the ground, and you're not going to have that kind of nucleus of people who start singing that's been built up over the course of so many years. So that's going to be another thing, and there's loads of stuff like that, isn't there? That's kind of going to take a while to sort of fall into place. But you mentioned there about the team, Paddy, and I did watch the game, and I think for me, like, I saw a lot of negativity after the game, and I wasn't quite maybe as downbeat as a lot of people. It kind of felt to me like as soon as Moyes decided to take two of that midfield three off, the roof sort of caved in a little bit, and we lost control, and we lost discipline. And Dewsbury Hall was really good, probably 55 minutes, and you could see he started to tire a little bit. But when those two went off, and I think it's mad calling Dewsbury Hall a key player after he's played less than an hour in a friendly game, but they feel like they're going to be key pillars in that midfield, and in regards to balance and keeping the ball and just keeping everything ticking over. And without them, it felt like Roma just sort of got a grip of the game in that area. That Kone, I think, really came into the game, didn't he, as well? And from that point on, it was only really one side, didn't it?
Yeah, it's funny you mention how important Dewsbury Hall seemed on Saturday, because we spoke to David Moyes in the mix zone after the game, and he effectively said, like, you could already see just off the basis of Saturday's game and training sessions that Dewsbury Hall gave them something different. It was like having another level in that position. I think he was the big positive from the on-pitch side of Saturday's game. I thought they did okay until those substitutions. I think Roma are obviously slicker on the ball, but I'd argue that for 55, 60 minutes, Everton create the better chances in the game. Particularly I think the big golden chance in the game is the one that Njai misses from Barry's through ball. And I think we were all expecting that to go in for the net to bulge, and somehow still it didn't. From that point on, there only seemed to be one winner, really. I sat next to Chris from the Echo, and on about 60, I said, this got a pungent whiff of 1-0 Roma about it, that kind of Everton fatalism. So at the end, when that comes true, I mean, obviously nobody was particularly surprised. I guess they're just like, this is a continuation of the themes from the summer, isn't it? Again, we talk about the lack of depth. We talk about the need to strengthen in certain areas. I thought the right side was a real glaring weakness again for most of Saturday's game. The left, from the point at which Mikalenko went off. And there, I mean, let's be careful with that. Adam Asnu, and give him a bit of time. But he obviously had a challenging debut where he was out of position a few times and was then hooked right at the end. I felt so much broke down on the right. They got Jake O'Brien in some really good positions behind the opposition defence. And because he's a central defender playing at right back, he wasn't able to muster the quality consistently. Equally, Dewsbury Hall and Idrissa Gueye go off, and the replacements aren't quite up to scratch. That's why they have to do more work in the market. So I'd be relatively positive that they went toe to toe with a decent Roma side that qualified for the Europa League last season in Serie A. in that first 55, 60 minutes. It was what followed after that that gives people cause for concern, obviously. And I understand that. I understand that there's still work to do for this side to be ready to compete week in, week out in the Premier League. We knew that before the game, I'd say. And what we saw on Saturday probably only emphasised that further.
Yeah, definitely. And without wanting to sort of waste any more time, let's get into that, because the big talking point this week, and I'm sure the reason why most people are listening to this, is about Jack Grealish. Sort of a bit of a play we talked about a lot over the summer, Paddy. I think when this sort of emerged early in the window, we were kind of maybe, I'm not sure about this. A lot of money. Is it really the statement signing that we need? And I think we were both relatively cold on it. I'm being totally honest. Now that this is happening, and now that he's outside Finch Farm, seemingly in his Puma trackie, getting photos of youngsters in Everton kits, I am fully on board. I am very excited, and I will no doubt be wearing headbands and low slung socks all week. Just for a second, just take your journalistic athletic hat off and put your, young Paddy Boyland hat on. Are you excited about this? Because it's one of I sort of tweeted today that I think Everton over the past few years have just given me so much scar tissue that I think when I look at a deal like this now, I sort of worry more about how much it's going to cost and the PSR and all that sort of stuff. And should we just forget about all that with this and just think, God, we're getting a really exciting player. We're getting a really, sort of vivacious, intriguing character. Let's just enjoy it. Let's just enjoy the ride for a year.
I think it's really interesting because the initial response, I imagine, from most Everton fans, let's say if you took 100 Everton fans right now and said, how are you feeling about the Jack Grealish thing? The first thing that would come through is probably excitement from the vast majority. And even for myself as a journalist, there's probably elements of that. I mean, journalistically,
journalist hats off, Paddy. You're the fan. You're the youngster who used to get rushing out to get Arteta on the back of your shirt or something like that.
Yeah, well, as a kid, I would have been dead excited about this. I mean, he would have been the one I'd have wanted on. Like I'd already be pestering my dad right now for a Jack Grealish Everton shirt, whatever number he eventually ends up taking. Until just now, it would have been Iliman and Jai. But I'm pretty sure Grealish will surpass Njai by quite some distance with supporters who are getting names and numbers on the back of their shirts. The point that I want to make about the journalistic side, though, is that it's good for journalists. Like, there'll be a load of eyeballs on Everton now that maybe wouldn't have been on them in the weeks previously because of how big a name Jack Grealish still is. So actually, as a journalist as well, you're almost incentivized to like this because of what it's going to mean for pieces and the audience and all that kind of stuff. I think 3 or 4 things can simultaneously be true at the same time. So I think you can be excited by the prospect of Grealish should he get back to his best or anywhere approaching his best, because he'd be a big asset to Everton in that sense for the season. You can also be mindful, after the Mashiri era in particular, of some of the other signings that went slightly awry. So, for example, James Rodriguez, whether you blame Mashiri or Benitez for the way that transpired. We know that in times gone by, Everton spent too much money. And in this PSR era, Everton have to be careful. But I don't think that's the first thing that comes through when Everton fans hear Jack Grealish is potentially signing and things are close. And I think it's also fair, as we pointed out on past shows, to look at where he fits in and what the knock-on effect is, and to understand that Jack Grealish coming in won't solve the fact that Everton don't have a fully functioning right side, for example. It won't solve the fact that there's a lack of pace in the team. So what I would say is, yes, this is a massive statement of intent from TFG and everybody else. They will have done well, should Grealish sign, to convince him to come. I would argue it would be a huge financial package, with him becoming comfortably the side's biggest biggest earner. And it's kind of I would say it's a calculated gamble early on in TFG's tenure, where there's no guarantee this works. But if it does work and he's a hit, then it's potentially a catalyst for bigger and better things. So I think all of those points, I mean, Twitter doesn't deal well with nuance, does it? Let's be honest. Even sometimes when I'm speaking to family members or friends, this is quite a difficult conversation to wrap everything in and to express the nuance of the opinion. But I think all of those things are just about true. So, I mean, it's exciting, but you also kind of don't really know what to expect. What is Jack Grealish, age 29, like? I guess we'll soon see. And I mean, the idea of him, for example, walking out of Bramley Moor for the first time, and the levels of expectation there would be off the charts, wouldn't they?
Oh, the excitement's going to be ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the build up and all the chatter around him is going to be huge. And I saw. I think when we spoke about this earlier in the summer, we were sort of saying, like, do Everton really need a statement signing? And then you're sort of looking at some of the reactions to this over the past 24 hours, 48 hours or so. And one of the things that people have said is that the Freaking Group did something similar with Roma in regards to Dybala. And then obviously with Lukaku as well.
Yeah.
So it's clearly something out of their playbook. But do you think this should be a priority for Everton in that regard? Because, or I suppose I'll phrase that differently. I feel like I would have been much more at ease with this if we'd signed, we're going to talk about him a bit later, but Tyler Dibling, say we got him in, we've got right back X to come in and, do a job on that side. And then we kind of got to the end of the window. We looked at our squad and thought, right, we've got more or less 2 players for each position. We're sound. We've not spent an absolute fortune compared to a lot of clubs. Grealish is there. He's available. He'd be the cherry on top of the cake of the window. I think I'd feel much more at ease with it if we'd gone about it that way. But because there's so many glaring issues in the team, we've got the right side. We've spoken about it in every single show we've done this summer. Now that needs to be resolved. He's not going to resolve that. And I think you look at him coming in, like I said, really excited what he can offer. Really like him as a personality. He's obviously very vibrant, and he'll be great for that kind of stuff. But you're looking at him now and you're thinking, if he's going to play up the left-hand side, Everton are going to have to potentially move the best attacker from the last 12 months out of the position he's been doing well in. And then does Ndiaye play behind the centre forward, where then you'd have to drop Dewsbury Hall back potentially into a position he's not maybe that suited for as a deeper midfielder? Or just put Ndiaye on the right-hand side where I don't think he's ever played for Everton. I think he maybe started there once last season against Wolves.
The goal against England, wasn't it?
He did well in that game as well, didn't he? Like he looked more comfortable there than I imagined. But listen, the sample size is small, isn't it? So, like as great as this is, you look at it and think, is he worth in his current state and what he's been doing, sort of transforming and moving your entire attack around? And let's be honest, that attack's not been great and functioning necessarily that well. But there is one part of it in Ndiaye that's been functioning pretty well. Scored 11 goals, I think, in all competitions last season. Everyone loves him, as you mentioned there. So I think that's the interesting thing for me now, is that has Moyes got it in his head, like how this is all going to fit together? Or is this just a case of he's available, he's a big name, he could still be a brilliant player, let's go and get him in?
Yeah, I think Everton, and I include Moyes and the ownership in this as a collective, think this is a gamble worth taking because of his profile and what he can potentially bring. I mean, you look at Everton last season, they had the joint fourth best defensive record in the league, but were the lowest scorers of any side not to get relegated, despite finishing 13th. So that tells you everything you need to know. The context is everything here because, like you say, if Everton had 1 or 2 wingers in right now, if they'd signed Dibling or Fofana or Bakayoko or Conceição, then you'd probably see Jack Grealish as the icing on the cake and the one that would push Everton onto the next level. But I think they've just seen an opportunity here that's come up at the right time for them in the window. We've spoken a lot on this show over summer about some of these deals, and I think we mentioned Manchester City and Chelsea players in particular coming available later in the window. when those sides have done their business and they're looking to get their fringe players out. So it's probably a case of taking this and then reshaping from there. It doesn't change the fact, as you've pointed out, as I've said now so many times that I'm probably sick of saying it, that they need pace in the team. I mean, you watch them on Saturday, and the thing that comes through is how lacking in dynamism they are, aside from the occasional Njai run or bit of quality from, let's say, Carlos Alcaraz. Again, Grealish doesn't necessarily change things from that point of view, but he will be comfortably the best player technically for the positions behind the striker. I think he gets a central role, by the way, Matt. Whether he then ends up drifting off to the left.
So by central, do you mean he will play as the number 10 or he'll be a key player?
I mean in every sense. I mean, obviously he will have to be a key player given the combined package, which will be comfortably in excess of 10 million for the season, probably more. But I also mean that I think he will be the one that is dictating everything, whether it's from a central position or out left. And I think probably you just say to him, you go and play as the number 10. You be the main man. I think that's how Everton sold this to him. And then whether you drift out left and others interchange, we'll work it out from there. So it can't be Everton's last piece of business, because it would leave the squad still, not just because of Grealish, but it would leave the squad lacking in balance. I think we still have to look at that right side, both on the right wing and at right back. Still feel that the midfield is too reliant on Idrissa Gueye, and worry about what happens, A, if he picks up an injury, or B, when he's at AFCON for December and Senegal go on a run. I suppose the other thing to point out is that maybe you've got the perfect player to swap out in that Njai role when Njai's in AFCON, because Grealish, if needed, could kind of play from the left and do many of the same things. So there's a lot going on here and a lot still to resolve, and I'm not going to pretend that Jack Grealish solves all of Everton's problems. But I would go back to the previous point where if he's anywhere approaching, if he's 75% of what we saw at Aston Villa or Manchester City, he probably is a big asset to the team and a big improvement, even just in the short term.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how it all fits together now. Like, you could maybe see a situation where Dewsbury Hall kind of plays narrow on that right hand side, which I don't think suits him at all. But
or deeper.
Yeah, and I also kind of look at it and think if you play him on that right hand side and Njai to an extent, because the natural inclination is going to be to sort of come inside and Dewsbury Hall more as a midfielder and Njai more as a forward. You need someone who's given the whiff, don't you, on that other side, and that obviously takes us back to our need for a right back. So yeah, really intrigued. Just one more question to ask you about Grealish, and I don't know if you've done loads of reporting around this, but I think obviously there's been a lot of talk about how this is great for everything commercially. He's a big name, gets us in the news, high profile, all those things. He's a winner. I know Dave Downey loves that phrase. He's got a winner mentality. He's bringing to Everton, and he'll set standards and all that kind of thing. But what does this sort of thing, do you think, do for the dressing room? And certainly in the case of someone like Pickford, who I know is quite a good mate to him, so maybe to a lesser extent, but certainly someone like Jarrad Branthwaite, who's just signed a huge in relative terms now, I suppose, contract to become one of Everton's top earners, 5-year deal. He will be on, we don't know, but upwards of £100,000 a week, I would imagine, Jarrad Branthwaite. And all of a sudden, Everton are bringing in a lad on loan who's going to be earning twice as much as him, maybe £100,000 more than anybody in that dressing room. I mean, is there any concerns from your point of view that maybe the dressing room would think, we've been here for the last few years, we've earned these contracts, the bringing in a lad who, I'm not saying got a questionable attitude, but has not really played a ton of football over the last couple of years, is kind of maybe not past his best, but certainly starting to slowly come down at the other side of the mountain. Like, that could potentially be something that upsets the dynamic a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I think you've got a room full of 20 or 30 somethings, and they're all acutely aware of what the others are on. At times it's kind of a professional thing. At times it becomes a pride thing. So that they will all be discussing this and they'll have their opinions on it. And I don't think the opinions, as in any workplace, I don't necessarily think the opinions would be 100% unanimous. I mean, I know for a fact that players discuss what they're on with each other, and sometimes there's a bit of grumbling. Well, this lad's on more than I am, and so on, so forth. There will be others at the club that will look at that and go, you know what, he's going to be the main man, and this is the club showing ambition, and we wanted the club to show ambition for a while. So there'll be some of that in there. Jordan Pickford's interesting because he knows Grealish very well from the time at England. They are represented by the same agency. So that bond will be pretty tight. All of these lads, most of these lads, if they're not kind of North Liverpool, close to where you are, Matt, in the fertile plains of Sefton, they will be South Manchester, Cheshire, and hanging around in the same circles. I think that's one of the things that will have appealed to Jack Grealish, by the way, in the sense that he can stay where he is, doesn't have to go elsewhere. He can stay in the same house, mix in the same circles, and so on and so forth. So I think there'll be a range within that dressing room. Players being on much more money than their teammates can, we know from past experience, be a destabilising influence. But who's to say whether it will be here? There will be some, I'm sure, who think this is a positive. And of course, we have to point out that there'll be people shouting at this YouTube screen or at their phones while they're listening on the podcast saying that it's not our money and that this should be something that we should kind of forget about. I mean, I'm not that way inclined. I always think that we do, after the Mashiri, we do need to be aware of where Everton are financially. But that little kind of the inner child kind of runs away with you at times, doesn't it? And I think most people go with the gut instinct, which is I'm really excited to see this lad play.
Yeah, all of this would just fade away, won't it, if he's really good.
Yes.
We wouldn't be talking about any of this. If he starts the season and plays really well, and first 10 games he's brilliant, this is always going to be forgotten, isn't it? And we'll be talking about his calves and his dribbling and his passing and his hair. That's what we want to be talking about, really, isn't it? Not how much he's going to cost and all that kind of thing.
You can share your hair tips and you can share your hair bands, all that kind of stuff. The other thing I would point out here is that, let's say, for argument's sake, and we haven't had this confirmed, by the way, because as of Monday when we're recording, the clubs were still thrashing out certain elements of the deal. There was enough confidence for him to travel, obviously, enough confidence that it was heading in the right direction for him to do so, but they were still thrashing out terms. So not yet confirmed, but let's say ballpark Everton end up paying 12 million as a package for Jack Grealish for the year. Each Premier League place is worth 3 million. So if Everton were to finish 4 places higher with Jack Grealish than without, because of him, then it virtually pays for himself. He pays for himself. It pays for itself. So there's that to consider as well. And I think that's why, when you wrap it all in, somebody's put this to Moyes and to TFG and said, we can do this for 12 million. You can have Jack Grealish for a year. Do you want it, yes or no? I think that's why they've said yes to it, because they know while it is a risk, he's not contracted to be an Everton player beyond this season. So even if it doesn't work out, they pay the 12 million and part ways.
Yeah, that's it. And I think final point for me on this as well, I think we sort of touched upon this a little bit, is that if you're going to finish largely in mid-table, you need to have a good time as well to sort of keep coming back and keep the interest there. And players like Jack Grealish, if he's on it, people are going to rock up to that stadium every week and think, can't wait to watch this lad, kick a football around, because he is so good. He's so talented at his best. And I put on Twitter earlier, at full throttle, he is a fantasy footballer, and hopefully there's still some of that spark there going forward. But as we've mentioned, there's still loads to do, essentially, in regards to the team. That right-hand side needs serious work. Tyler Dibling, Paddy, when we stood outside Wrigley Field a couple of weeks ago now and recorded that short video after the Cubs' gallant 1-0 win in the baseball, we sort of thought this was going to be wrapped up relatively quick. I think at the time the price was quoted 35 million, Everton had been 27, and it was kind of a feeling that they sort of come together in the middle, and since then it's just kind of feel like it's got further and further away, really, to the point where seems like Everton might be ready to pull the plug on this one and move on. They've obviously been linked with Fatawu from Leicester today. But yeah, like he's obviously been marginalised a bit by Southampton, kept out of their squad at the weekend, and people I think were taking a lot from that. But I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's dead in the water quite yet, but maybe erring towards that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a gambling man, and I always veer away from making kind of definitive predictions because football is mad. You can be pursuing other targets for 2 weeks and then something changes and you come back to the table. But what I think is problematic with this deal is in that, certainly from Southampton's side, this is quite a public stance, and it's actually going to take quite a lot for them to climb down from what I consider to be a pretty outrageous demand on fee and sell-on clause, whilst also saving face. There are ways of doing that, but it's tough in this climate where so much leaks out. I mean, I found it a fascinating thing to report on, Matt, because you get conflicting messages from both sides. So, kind of from the Southampton end, it's been, well, this is quite close. We're haggling over a few million. He's not going to train, and he's not going to play in the game at the weekend in the Championship, where obviously they beat Wrexham 2-1, and that kind of brings you to think, well, surely this could happen. This should happen, even. But when I talk about conflicted messages, everything we've heard from where we are right now, kind of Merseyside grapevine, has been pretty contradictory. It's been actually the clubs are a lot further apart than Southampton have publicly wanted to make out. We obviously know that Southampton put kind of a counter offer to Everton, and that their valuation, when you include a sell-on, priced Dibling in excess, and I would argue comfortably in excess of £50 million. This narrative that the two clubs have been 1 or 2 million apart, to me, from what I've been told, is complete nonsense. I mean, one of Everton's last bids got them up into kind of, with add-ons and with contingent add-ons, I must point out, probably got them up to somewhere around 37, 38. So by my estimates, they've been around 10 million or more apart, and that's before you even include the sell-on element. The sell-on element, of course, is really inhibiting on Everton's side, because what it means is this lad does really well. Southampton are going to take 25% of the profit on him anyway if he's resold in the future. Part of the reason for signing somebody like Tyler Dibling is that at some point, if you need to or you want to, he becomes an England player and you can cash in on him. So Everton for now, as I think I've been pointing out for probably a week and a half, I've been pursuing other targets and looking at other players. It would take, I think, something to change probably on the Southampton side with regards to valuation and sell-on and so forth, or for Everton to get exceedingly desperate and relent. But it's hard for, given how public this has all been, for either party to sort of do that. So let's see where they go. The Fatawu link is interesting because he's been a player on the radar before. Don't think he would command the same sort of fee as Dibling. Not entirely sure, even though he's a talented young player, not entirely sure he's necessarily got Dibling's ceiling long term. And of course, he got a nasty ACL injury last season, which curtailed most of his time in the Premier League with Leicester. So there are probably a few more question marks there as well. They're right to pursue other targets, I think. And let's see how this goes. I think they have to get a right winger this window. And I would argue, looking at the squad right now, do they need two? I still probably think they need two wingers.
Yeah, like the Dibling thing is weird because, like, based on what you've said there, and again, it must be me reading between the lines, but like the messages that have kind of come from the Southampton end of it would suggest that they wouldn't mind selling him in that sense. It's kind of like, a little bit probing towards, we're not far off, and it's putting a bit of pressure on Everton's side. Yeah. Do you not think there's a situation where, like, and we see this all the time, where this, so you said it could be like, there's about 10 million gap, you'd say, in the valuations. Like, could they not just get together behind the scenes without people knowing and say, right, 45 million. Let's get this boxed off, right? And then you brief that it's closer to 50 million, Southampton, and you brief Everton law that it's closer to 40 with potential add-ons. Like that happens all the time, doesn't it? And like it feels like both parties want this to happen. Everton are clearly willing to spend big money on this lad and rate him really highly. Southampton obviously rate him highly as well, but seemingly are quite keen for this sale to go through. Like that just seems like it'd make everyone happy in that regard, but because like let's be honest, clubs lie all the time about these transfers and paint it favourably. I've seen it over the last few weeks in regard. Lie is a strong word. They don't lie. They will massage the numbers and manipulate certain things to make it look like the best deal for them. Like I've seen it over the last few weeks with Liverpool sales. Like when they're selling players, the number is briefed clearly in euros, and when they're buying players, it's briefed in pounds to make it look less. Like that feels like, I suppose, long way of saying it feels like there's a way through to this deal still happening where everybody can still save some face.
There is, yes, of course. That you'd never say that it's a 0% chance. I don't think it's a high chance right now, as of Monday evening. But there are ways, as you say. Let's say, for example, in this hypothetical scenario, Everton wanted to pay £45 million for a winger. And I don't think they do for Dibling, by the way. I think that would be far too high for them. But if they wanted to pay £45 million for a winger and Southampton wanted 55, you could end up in a situation where it's 45 million guaranteed with another 10 million contingent in add-ons. Some of those add-ons might be ridiculous. Everton qualifying for the Champions League or winning a cup or whatever it may be in the near future. And you get one side saying initial 45 million and you get the other side saying a deal worth up to 55. We see it all the time. You're entirely right. It happens on just about every single deal. I do think the problem is just the strength of the number from Southampton and the fact that they've not been willing to budge. And I think what you have to remember is that they believe this kid is really special. They think he's, and I can understand why, having watched him last season, they think he's frighteningly good, future England international, who will go on to command in excess of 100 million. And I believe actually they have quoted people £100 million before for him. That seems steep. I think a valuation even over £50 million seems steep. But maybe we'd have had people last summer telling us Everton's valuation of 75 million on Branthwaite was very excessive. In fact, I'm pretty sure we would have had Manchester United fans telling us that. So I'm acutely aware of all of those things. There are ways of saving face, but it just feels like they are far apart at the moment. I don't think Southampton have closed the door. I think Southampton would sell at the right price. But I also don't think the way they are briefing is only designed to put pressure on Everton. I think it's also a way of getting other people involved, bringing other clubs to the table potentially, or at the very least alerting them that there's a deal to be done for around. And they've done this not so subtly, but for around £50 million. I would argue.
Yeah, it's just all so much PR involved in transfers as well, isn't it? Like
there's a lot of nonsense, Matt. There's a lot of nonsense, and that makes it difficult. It makes it a bit of a minefield. And I think particularly on this one, for example, sometimes you have things that are relatively clear cut. I mean, like the Dewsbury Hall one.
Yeah.
When we put stuff to both clubs, it's kind of and it could reach an extra few million if this clause is hit, and in reality, it's going to be this, and so on. And actually the numbers aren't that far apart anyway. But here there's just such a big gap between what people are saying. So you're just kind of constantly weighing up how reliable is this information versus this information, and how many people are telling me this versus this, and where's it coming from, and what are the motivations. That's the transfer window in a nutshell. And that's going to be why the last few weeks of the window, particularly for reporters like me and you, is just going to be, it's always wild, isn't it?
Like transfer fees should be public, in my opinion. I've always felt like I can understand why wages aren't like that. I get that to an extent, but like it's just the money you're paying on a player. Like why can't that just be released by the Premier League? I don't know, but yeah,
they are in other certain other
leagues,
and in certain other competitions in different sports. I just don't think that's the way football is going, Premier League football is going. If anything, there's a move towards more confidentiality. I agree with you. It'd be lovely in the same way that it'd be lovely if every Friday I looked at my email inbox and saw an injury update which says Yerry Mina is out with a adductor injury and he's going to be on the treatment table for 4 weeks. It doesn't happen, and it is highly unlikely to happen.
Still subscribe to Yerry Mina updates, even though he's out in. Is he in Serie A still?
I've spent too much time with Rob Vera recently, haven't I? Because I've got Yerry.
Yeah,
he was exactly the first name that came to mind when I was thinking, let's pick a player from the past for an Everton injury update. Probably because he spends a lot of time injured.
Yeah,
as well.
Yerry Mina by osmosis there, I think.
He's with Cagliari and helped them stay up last season.
There we go.
In Italy. So, in fairness, doing very well. I know Rob is very frustrated that Yerry has stayed fit for most of his time at Cagliari. That does seem to be kind of very Everton that as well, doesn't it? But yeah.
There we go. Right. We'll finish up, Paddy, with this is obviously episode 54. We've got a few suggestions for you this week. I'm going to go with this one because it's a good memory, even though I don't know if you were at this game actually, but obviously most people weren't. It's from Clive Brown, who said, congratulations for the Everton Byline. I'm an avid watcher. Good to hear about all things Everton from a journalist perspective, especially when they're toppies themselves. He said, regarding episode 54, surely you're going to be snowed under with the suggestions for the memorable FA Cup 5th round classic on the 10th of February 2021 when we beat Tottenham 5-4 in extra time. Bernard with the winner.
Yeah.
As much of the result was remembered as being a game of chess between the two grandmasters of Ancelotti and Mourinho, Carlo was the coolest man in Goodison by blowing on his cup of coffee while the backroom staff behind him are going ballistic. His in-game management was second to none. So cheers for that, Clive. Mad game. Did Davison Sanchez score twice in that game as well? Bizarrely.
Yeah, Everton were really flaky on crosses. They just kept on putting the ball under the crossbar. I think it was Robin Olsen in goal, which probably explains an awful lot. kind of leaden-footed. Yes, Harry Kane scored as well, I think, late on to take it into extra time. It's described as a game of chess. I mean, maybe it was a game of chess, but if it was a very chaotic one where I think just like loads of things happened kind of unexpectedly or off the cuff. There's some great goals in there as well, by the way. Bernard's one to win it. I mean, he didn't really show any sort of other finishing like that in his time at Everton. There's a really good goal from Richarlison at the Park end in the first half where he strikes from distance. I mean, we're back to that really weird period, of course, during COVID, where there's probably about 20 of us in the main stand dotted around in just kind of random seats with desks that pull up, trying to kind of make sense of this kind of semi-football, if you want to call it that, where there's no fans and it's hard to derive meaning from anything. But also Carlo Ancelotti's in the dugout, James Rodriguez has been pulling the strings, and Everton are actually really quite good. So it is a memory. I don't look back on it particularly fondly, even though I was there. And again, something I've said on previous shows, but like, imagine Goodison for that game had it transpired like that with a full crowd. I mean, that would have been something else. And I feel like we don't speak about it in the same vein because of the lack of fans, because of the absence of fans that night.
Yeah, I think it says a lot that we won 5-4 in this dramatic game, and the thing that people remember most about that match is Ancelotti blowing on his coffee or whatever it was.
Well, I think it's the funny thing about Ancelotti is that, like, because of what he'd done in the game, it's whatever he saw, he kind of just shrugged his shoulders and got on with it. I mean, like, remember they beat Liverpool 2-0 at Anfield, obviously breaking the long run without an Anfield derby win. I was told the next day, like, what did Carlo get up to? Because the players obviously went on a bit of a mad one. And I think he was just sat at home in Crosby with a glass of red, just in front of the TV. So it's just like, what's going on here? It's like for him, like, unless Everton win a trophy, he just kind of shrugs. And like, it was the same with his response to that Bernard goal that blew on his cup. I think it was a cup of tea and blew on his cup of tea, and Duncan Ferguson's like a maniac in the background, jumping around. that was not Carlo. It was never Carlo, was it?
No, absolutely not. But yeah, a great little gift that was certainly doing the rounds for a while afterwards. Still see it now occasionally as well. But no, that was a great suggestion. If you've got any suggestions for 55 next week, listeners, don't think we've had many 5-5s in our history, so it might be a struggle for that. But anything to do with 55, the number 55, if you're a 55-year-old Evertonian, or you know something about 1955 that happened with Everton, give us a shout. Or maybe Grealish will pick number 55, Paddy, and we'll be sorted for next week then.
Yeah. Let's hope so, because it would mean that I don't get put on the spot about what happened in 1995 with minimal prep. So let's go for that.
Well, yeah, I think he's going to wear number 8, isn't he? I'd imagine that's the best free number available, but we'll see.
That's what I would wear, but there are obviously other numbers available. I think 18 off the top of my head, that's available. Wayne Rooney's former number. So that's another possibility. I mean, he in essence will get to choose what he wants, won't he? He's Jack Grealish rocking up at Everton, so he'll decide his number and then he'll go with that.
You can't be taking the 10 off in Jai, can you? That'll be a bit too harsh. But
no, that'll be harsh. I think he's going to have to pick a number. In fairness, he's going to have to pick a number that's, provided this goes through as expected, he's going to have to pick a number that is free at the very least, so he doesn't wind other teammates up. I quite like it seeing Njai in the 10 as well, and obviously there will be, despite warnings from the club that numbers are not finalised, there'll be a load of kids running around with Njai 10 as well, as I would have been, as I said earlier, as a kid.
I wonder if you can get the 11 off Barry, who's been wearing that. And I don't know. Maybe some negotiating to be done there.
That'll be harsh. No, he's got 8's open and 18's open. He's got to take one of those two.
Fair enough. Right. We will address that next week when it's set in stone, hopefully when that deal gets done. Just a shout out, by the way, if you're all looking for something to do this Saturday and you're in town, our good friend Laura Gates is putting on a photography exhibition at the Denby Castle. It's from 2:00 onwards. It'll be raising money for fans supporting food banks as well. I'm sure people who follow us will know how great Laura is and that sort of stuff. And you can have a pint in the Denby whilst looking at great pictures of everything. So do get down there. 2:00 on Saturday, raising money for fans supporting food banks. Just a reminder, if you watch us on YouTube, help us get to that 5,000. It'll be really, really cool to get there before the season starts. If you hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment, hit like. Let us know your thoughts on all things Jack Grealish with that deal looking like it's seemingly going to happen now. If you listen to us on iTunes or Spotify, do leave us a rating, do leave us a review. And we'll be back next week with Premier League football in sight. We're figuring out whether we're going to do Monday or Tuesday, but we'll let people know through various other shows and social media. So we'll be back in and around Leeds.
It won't be Monday. I'll be at Ellen Road on Monday.
Yeah, we'll be back in and around Leeds, I'll say, whether that's the Monday morning before the game or the day after. But we'll be around that game.
We'll just get people online in the comments to shout at us and tell us what day they want us to do.
What would you prefer? Would you prefer a Leeds No one likes previews, really.
No, I don't like previews, Matt. I prefer talking about what's already happened.
Maybe we'll do Wednesday then. We'll see. Yeah, but we'll let people know.
Shout at us in the comments and we'll respond accordingly. I think we're happy to take the general consensus on this. I think.
Yeah, if we sign a right winger, we might do a special because it's been so long.
somebody who goes at quicker than walking pace. We'll do a special.
There we go. Everton signed fast player, Byline special. Yeah. That's it from us. Cheers to everyone for tuning in. As ever, cheers to Paddy. The Premier League is back soon. Up the Toffees.